Hi everyone, welcome to Head Your Colour. Welcome if you've just hopped over from Facebook. We are doing one of our reviews tutorials today. So I'm going to be talking to you about heat tools and what heat tool to choose. Now there's lots and lots on the market at varying price points and all sorts of different things, and some of them do different things. So I wanted to run through the ones I have, what I would recommend, and why I actually have two of them. So I'm going to flip the camera over to my desk. I've got some different things I'm going to show you about watercolor backgrounds and heat embossing and things like that, and I'm going to take you through my recommendations. So let's move you over to my iMac. There we go. So this is my desk, which you have all seen before. So I'm going to move this out the way as well. Now I'm going to start with some watercolor paper, which is this one here. This is just some watercolor cold press, £140 from Canson, and I'm going to do what we call the splodging technique. So it's just where you add some ink to a piece of acetate. This is just the back of one of my stamp sheets, and then we're going to spritz it with water to activate it, and I'm using the Distress Oxides because they're beautiful for this kind of backgrounds. And then you can do this, you can move them around. Now the thing with the oxides, as you know, is always just do one colour at a time. So we'll start with the pink. I'll get Maddie to wipe that acetate off for me. Now I have two heat tools here. I have the Reinker Heat It, and I also have this heat embossing tool, which I'm just grabbing.
What's the difference?
Which is the Darcy's. Now I actually have in the blog post, it's going to be linked down in this corner if you're not watching us live, and it'll be up as soon as we're finished. I can upload it. I've already written it for you. I'm going to recommend the Wagner heat embossing tool. It's around about the same price point as this, but it's much better. I've just ordered mine. You'll see in the blog post that I talked myself into replacing this. I had the Wagner in England. It's made by Hero Arts, and it is the best heat tool on the market. Lots of companies have it rebranded for themselves, people like Stampin' Up. But I had to get this one because when I got here I didn't realise my Wagner wouldn't work with the different voltage. Everything has worked apart from my heat tool and my vacuum. So I did pretty well. So I ran out to Joann's, and this is the one they just happened to have on the shelf, which is how I've ended up with it. But you will see very shortly I will have a Wagner too. Now this one is very hot and it has a high puff of air. You can hear this one. And when I go to my watercolour, it's going to move that water about. Now, sometimes we want to move our water about, but other times we quite like how we've ended up with these edges, which is where the Heat It comes in. And I love this when I'm working with any kind of water or backgrounds. When I was speaking to Tim Holtz, he was telling me that this is what this particular tool is designed for. We'll get on to heat embossing in a minute, but you'll hear this one has a much lower airflow rate. You'll hear it's much quieter. You may not even be able to hear it particularly well. It gets the same temperature as a heat embossing tool, but it's not moving my water around. All it's doing is heating it up so that that water will evaporate and dry into the paper, which quite often is exactly what we want it to do. We don't want it to always move around. Sometimes watermarks are fun, sometimes we just want to dry what we've got, and we've got it absolutely perfect. Morning Rachel, thank you. So I'm just going to keep going on this one just for a second. I'm going to dry a couple of these areas, and the others I'll take out with kitchen towel. And then you can see here it's drying, so it will dry slower than your embossing tool, just because of the amount of air that's coming out of it. But what you will get is the exact same effect that you see now, which may well be exactly what we want. So I'm just drying out a couple of these areas, and we'll speed the process along with some kitchen towel as well. So let's just grab some of that, and we can just dab them into here. And by dabbing with kitchen towel, we end up with a lighter effect, but you can see where it was just going to dry exactly as we had it. So now we can add in some more colours. I'm going to add in some wilted violet. And again, we're going to spritz with water. And I use these big spritz tools because I don't have to refill them very often. So again, thank you, miss. And again, I can just go in and I can dry it. So it's going to stay exactly where it is. It's not going to move around like it would with a heat tool. So this is really nice to work with. The other thing is, of course, by drying it in between like this and drying exactly how you want it, you're not going to end up with muddy colours. which you can quite easily do when you're working with distress inks and sometimes with the distress oxides. But what you will still get is all these little fun pieces, and it's not going to get blown around, which I really like. We'll dry that one off like that, and I'll do this one.
This is so warm.
Like so. And then finally we could add some cracked pistachio, because I probably will use this as a card panel afterwards. So we'll pick this up, and I'm going to then just add a couple of places. I love this cracked pistachio. I'm going to add some really vibrant pieces. And then again, you can just dry it with this. So you do need a little bit more patience drying with this one, but it will not ruin any of those really fun watercolor effects that we have created. So this panel I will then stamp on and put into a card piece. And then also, just another tip, if you're working with distress oxides or normal distress inks and you're working with lots of water on the background, it's always worth drying the back, because by drying the back you'll end up with a straighter piece of card and your front will dry much quicker because the heat hasn't got to get all the way through. So there we go. So that's our dried piece that you can stamp on, add sequins to, all those kinds of things. So when you're working with water, I recommend this Reinker Heat It, and I've linked it up in the blog post because it is on sale at one of my favourite shops. Now the other thing, of course, is heat embossing. So I have just grabbed this Jane Doodles Lily set, and let's see what one will fit. That just about fits on my acrylic block, like this. So I'm going to use my Versamark, and I've just got some gold embossing powder here. This is my dirty Versamark. That's okay. And we'll tip that off into there. So give that a nice flick on the back. So when it comes to heat embossing, the Reinker tool is not really going to be what you want to work with. The Reinker tool will heat emboss eventually, but you will have to sit here for quite some time before it heats up your embossing powder to cook it enough. You can see I'm sitting here now and it's not really doing anything. I did try it the other day. It took me about 10 minutes to emboss, to get actually enough heat in here to emboss the powder. Whereas if you have a heat tool, and the Wagner one is even quicker, this will take me probably less than a minute to heat up my tool and emboss that embossing powder. Here we go, it's going already. And you saw how quick that was. Now the other time that the Reinker tool comes into really handy is if you were to then watercolor this, or maybe you added a lot of brush show or you did some watercolor over it, you can use this to still dry the watercolor even when you have heat embossing. So if I use my normal heat tool and I had watercolor on here, I'm highly likely to overcook this embossing powder. But because of how long it would take for this to do the embossing, you can dry any water-based pigments or whatever you decide to color your image in with. You can again dry it with this Reinker heat tool. So it's only a quick one for you today, but I hope you found those useful. Down here, if you're not watching us live, there will be a linked blog post with all links and pictures and some more tips and techniques in there for you as well. And we will see you again on our Facebook Live again soon, and we'll be back here on YouTube on Thursday. Happy stamping! Bye!